A little bit about us. We've been providing fleet management since 1994. We've been doing equipment monitoring since 2006, over 500 customers, 32 states. A little bit of international stuff. The system works pretty much anywhere. It's actually somewhat more interesting when things get stolen. We have a variety of things down in Mexico and South America and just different places. They keep reporting after people steal them. You don't need wherewithal to go get them, but when we look at a map of where our stuff is, it actually drifts a lot further away than what anybody intended. And we have the ability to manage equipment, trailers, and then anything unpowered. So everything from your welders, generators, to all of your trucks, and then even trailers, containers, anything that has interest to you. We're kind of curious to see what the pictures would look like up on the big screen, so we took the opportunity to do that. So we focus on the construction and heavy lift. About 80% of our business is vehicles, but we do have a variety of equipment as well. We are on just about any type of mobile crane that you can think of. So we work on all the big name ones, lots of different models, everything from ones that were purchased last year to ones that are older than we are. And we've gotten quite used to working on those systems. And then also tower cranes and hoists. So we got asked 2006 to get in the tower crane market, and now we understand that world as well. It's similar technology, similar data that comes in, but have on most of those models as well. Pretty much any type of earth moving equipment you could think of. We have a variety of dirt general contractors as well, so bulldozers, backhoes, rollers, pavers, anything on that side of the world. And then tractors, trucks, and trailers. And again, any type of truck you can think of, we've probably been on from limousines to big reefer trucks to over the road to your typical service van that shows up in the area. And then just recently doing more trailers. So that can be the Goldhofer trailers, which are a little bit harder to find, and you need the right configuration, to just flatbed trailers that people tend to leave on job sites and different places around old job sites on different parts of the country, and you tend to just misplace them. This is a little bit of a testament to our progress in the crane and hoist world, between Buckner, who's been real influential in this organization, invited us to come here today. They're a customer, as well as Morrow, Lamson, Biggie. A lot of the larger crane and hoist companies are using us, and we've been real grateful to learn and understand the industry and work with these guys. So when you think about it, it's a pretty basic system. So you take a device that I think I had out a minute ago. It's about this size. And this can be put in just about anything that has DC power, or if it's a piece of AC equipment, that we can convert it to DC power. But it's quite small, and this will let you know where it is. So there's the GPS satellites that we use for navigation in our cars or on our phones or anything else, communicates to this, and now this knows where it is, which doesn't do us a whole lot of good unless we know where it is. So the other component that's inside here is a cellular radio, which we currently use the AT&T network, but you could use any cellular network, or you could use a satellite network, which we do a little bit of as well. And then that communicates back to a back office where we will process the data and manage it. So in its simplest viewpoint, this is what it looks like from our standpoint. We've been doing this for a long time, so we don't get as excited about just the fact that we're moving data back and forth. More excited about the reports and the benefits that we can drive from it. So when you break it into pieces, I like to think of it as kind of step one is location and time. So when you think of what can you do once you have those two pieces of information together. So right now we know that we're in the room here, and we know that we're in this room at this time, so we're in here during this session without a whole lot of other people, granted. But that's what makes it kind of interesting, is it isn't that you just happen to be in this room, it's that you're in this room in this time, and what can you gain from that kind of data? So by taking that same concept of what's important to us as people, you can take the same thing important to your equipment. So it's not as interesting to know that your welder was on that job site. It was, when was it on that job site? So once we know location and time, we can do theft protection, and we can do time at location. So now we know where it is, and we know if it's been taken away, and we're able to monitor things for theft. The next thing you tie in is it running or not? So now if we tie into an ignition source, which could be anything on a mobile crane, it could be is your generator running, it could be the key switches on a tower crane, certainly if the motor's running on your truck. Now you know hours. So from hours, you can know hours of use. You also know that if it's not moving, because we know location, and it's running, now we know idling. And if the other thing that's interesting to us is when we maintain equipment, either over a certain distance traveled or a certain number of hours that it's run, now we can do maintenance. So by taking a pretty simple concept of understanding GPS is here, being able to communicate that as to this time, and knowing that it's running or not running, we can actually do a lot of interesting things. And there's a good part of our product, our offering of what's offered in the industry that focuses just on these things. If you get a little bit more specialized, you start adding sensors to the mix. So with a sensor, I can, welder's a good example again. I tie a sensor to it so I know when it actually is performing the weld. So now I know hours that it was actually running, but furthermore, I know the amount of time that it was actually being utilized. And you can look and see how much of the time should we be, do we need 5 welders on that job site if only 2 of them are utilized at more than 50% and the other ones are hardly used at all. So it's a way to gather that data. The next step is tying into the CAN bus of newer trucks or construction equipment or the cranes, and then you can get a whole bunch of diagnostics type data as well, which is interesting. And then the last step is the back office application. So now you have all this data coming in, what do you do with it? Is it just log it into a website and viewing it? Is it just reports? Or are you tying in dispatch systems, routing systems, accounting systems? How do you feed this into your business and make it far more automated so it doesn't have a lot of manual work taking data from one place to the other? So when people describe GPS fleet management, and if you happen to be looking for a system, you can start to look at these different categories of what's most important to you and sort out how many of these different features you want to add in, but knowing that the core relies on location, time, and ignition sense. So I'm going to march through about 6 different kind of benefit categories that can be done by having this kind of data, and a little bit about what you can expect, what is a reasonable expectation of what you're going to get as a benefit from it. So the first one is fuel reduction, and the general stat on vehicles is that 6 minutes of idling equals a mile of driving. So we see that people are idling for 30, 60 minutes at a time on construction sites, and you start to turn that into actual miles driven, and it winds up becoming quite large quite quickly. The industry stats say that you will save between 10 and 18% of your annual fuel usage just by monitoring idling. And this is something that's been proven over and over again. We get a new customer on board, our guys don't idle, and you start to run these reports and show what they're actually doing. And it really only takes a month or so of posting these reports on the wall. Or one of my favorite ones is, let's give a $200 prize to the guy that idles the least this month. So it's a little bit less about backhanding people and a little bit more about we're all working together to try to save money. But the 2 general things is they're amazed how much idling is occurring, and equally as impressed at how quickly you can stop it just by knowing that it's occurring. So what it looks like, and I think this is close to readable, the top line up there, we see that this is a driver, Jason, and this is Jason at his house before it's at 6:41 in the morning, so it's before he left for work, and he was idling for 31 minutes. So these are the kind of reports that you would get, that you could run daily, weekly, monthly, and sent to you, or you could have these sent to you in real time as a notice right now. And then we also can set speeding alerts. So the 2 key ones are you going 90 miles an hour on the interstate, and probably the next or even most important one is, are you going 70 miles an hour down the residential street? So we're able to tell, most systems are able to tell the difference between the different road types so that you're focused on speeding in the right categories, because speeding on a local road is far more dangerous than what you would get on the interstate. So that's something that is quickly added, quickly realized. The next benefit, payroll management. So most of our construction customers have folks that take their vehicles home. So they're supposed to use them to go to and from job sites. They're not supposed to use them on weekends. They're supposed to be treating it as a kind of a company benefit. What you will be able to do is see, when did they start? When did they leave? When did they arrive on the job site? How much time did they spend on that job site? When did they arrive back to the hotel or the house or the yard or whatever that might be? And run a report that looks almost like a timesheet. And by handing that piece of paper to someone filling out the timesheet, again, kind of surprised that the times are probably going to get a little bit shorter. and it wouldn't take more than finding an hour of extra overtime a month that was needlessly kind of accounted for, that the system just pays for itself. So payroll is another good place where you will see immediate benefits from it. You'll see less disputes for overtime. I think we all want to pay folks that are working overtime, that are doing a good job and working that 12 hours that day. No one feels badly about writing that check, but you're also going to see that the days where it was actually 10 and a half instead of the 12, now that goes back into the company coffers where they can choose to allocate it in different ways. Also more accurate costing to jobs by knowing just how much time is spent on there, and there's certain equipment that you're supposed to be spending X amount of time on job, and you're able to document that you are doing that. Or if you're billing per the time spent on jobs, then you're more accurate with that as well, and it's more automated, and you're not relying upon someone with a pen and a paper. So what this would look like is a daily summary. So here we have poor Jason again. He's a guy in our office that we pick on relentlessly. As an aside, we caught him today. We were doing a demo for somebody, and he was supposed to be at work, and we caught him at home, and it turned out he had a little case of the bottle flu this morning. And with all of us out of the office, he chose not to come into the office. So we were able to kind of spot, though, Jace, why are you at home today instead of in the office doing what you're supposed to be doing? But in this case, he was doing what he's supposed to be doing. He was up early. He was at the office by 8 o'clock in the morning. He was out for lunch at 12:30. And then back in the office, and he was there till 5:30, and he does a great job and doesn't mind being tracked and monitored because he knows he does a great job, I guess, except for days where he has too much fun with his buddies the night before. He's young. Anyway, this is the kind of thing that you would see. Looks kind of like a payroll report. This is something you could show on the screen. We have other reports that can hit your inbox. Set this up so that it runs as a weekly report and goes to your payroll department. Next category is reducing theft. So again, by knowing that the equipment is on there, it's installed, we're surprised at how little the thieves know about what they're taking. As far as this technology, we would have thought that by this time they'd be smart enough to disable the units, but they don't. So we catch people over and over again. Every week it seems like we're catching somebody that takes something that had a tracking device on it, and we are able to get it back. So we hide it out of sight. They're able to have it buried in there pretty deeply, either in a vehicle or on a piece of equipment. And then you put, we call it a geofence, but it's a virtual spatial border that goes around. It might be your yard, it might be a job site, it might be someone's home, whatever you want to track the comings and goings of. And then typically those can be timed as well. So it's okay that things come and go out of the yard during weekdays, but if it's between midnight and 4 a.m., then I want to be alerted, or if it's on weekends altogether, I want to be alerted. So different time frames. So what we're seeing here is we're recovering a lot of equipment, everything from local people to even some things recently down in Mexico that people are finding ways to get pulled back across the border. We have other companies that are able to reduce their insurance rates. So by knowing that the equipment isn't on a job site, that it's in the yard, they're able to say, hey, it's here and it's in my protected yard, I want a discount for this time period. Or you're able to say that my guys aren't driving 80 miles an hour, they're not going home from bars, they're not doing any of these things that you're factoring in because it's a take-home vehicle for this employee, so I want a reduced insurance rate. At the golf tournament yesterday, I was talking with one of the folks who said definitely they would be something that they would give discounts to if people could prove that they were using a tool like this. And then the last one is just misplaced equipment. We're amazed. We're not running businesses like yours, but just to see how things could get lost. And they're very big things, so it seems like they shouldn't be able to get lost, but then we realize that you have thousands of these big things and scattered all over different job sites across miles and states and coast to coast. It's not too surprised. So with this, it's pretty easy to know where your stuff is, and we've had folks that buy it just for that. I just gotta find a way to keep a better handle on where my stuff is. So what does that look like? This is a satellite image. And each of the icons on there, the bottom one, kind of the WT22, looks like it's some sort of a pumper truck. And so that's a vehicle. The circles up there are pieces of equipment. One looks like a John Deere. Both of them look like John Deere. And there's 5 other assets in there. So you put that fence, the outer shaded circle on there is the fence. And when the units are inside there, you don't get notified, and as soon as they get dragged out, so they don't have to be running, but they could get dragged out or pulled out, and as soon as that happens, they're going to start sending messages and say that I've crossed that border. And those can hit your cell phone, those can hit an email address, those can be pretty instantaneous, and you're able to get on the phone and start tracking out if that's correct or not correct. Preventative maintenance, another area that, again, we know the hours. So we talk to more and more companies wondering how they're collecting the hours from the equipment, and surprised at how hard that is as well. That just getting the right data coming in at the right time so that it belongs to the right equipment and is accurate is proving to be more of a challenge than people thought. So instead they make estimations of how much they thought the equipment was being run, and we'll send people out to these different job sites to maintain them. So they get out to one and it's been hardly run at all, and they wasted his trip and they really didn't need to do service, or they go to one and realize that it was double shifted and they're actually several hundred hours past due. So by having all this data come back into your system every night based upon the actual hours used, then you can monitor your maintenance more efficiently. Just take your existing guys and have them apply their resources better. So what that looks like is something like this. So you can see the different asset types. You see their current odometer or current hour meter. Works for vehicles as well as for equipment. And you can see the last time that service was occurred. In this case, up on top, it was a road tractor service, 15,000 miles or 150,000, 15,000 miles for this particular customer. And we see that what his odometer was, and we see the next scheduled service, and then we also do a predictive due date. So based upon how many miles is typically driven in a given day, we project that out so that this can go to your local service technicians or whoever's managing your maintenance, so they can have a much better view of when it's time to maintain the equipment. Next, I think there's two more. So utilization. So we talked a little bit earlier about what you can do when you add only not your runtime hours, but also your sensor data for utilization. So now you're able to track not only was the equipment running, but how effective was the equipment being used. And it's generally been easy in the past with things that move. So graders and rollers and those that move along, you can look at that pretty well, but it's much harder for a welder. I know we turn 12 of them on every day at the job site, or 6, or I know that we have certain equipment that's on job sites and they say they have to have it. I know it's running, but how much is actually being used? So by tying into a sensor data, which might be, is the weld actually occurring? It might be, is the crane walking? It might be, are the hydraulics engaged? Whatever constitutes work for that piece of equipment, now you can start to run data on the percentage of the time it's working versus actually running. And maybe you need to sell some of your equipment, maybe you could buy some more, maybe you need to stop renting from others, whatever decisions might be made, but once you have that data, you'll have a much better idea of how your job costing is going to work. So you can do something like this. You can run reports different ways, but I just threw it up as a gauge in this case. So in this particular, this is actually a welder from, I think, February. So it's work hours, which would coincide to kind of a shift time. So guys get there at 6 o'clock in the morning and they work till 4 o'clock in the afternoon. That would be 10 hours of shift time. So in this case, the work hours were around 122, give or take. The time that it was actually running during that time is roughly 100 hours. And then the amount of time that they were actually welding was 50 hours. I'm not don't know enough to know if that's great, or if that's good, or if that's bad, but I bet you guys do. Or if you own welders, you do. So to try to have an idea of what percentage of the time those should actually be fired up and working versus just fired up and running is what you can do when you start to add in that kind of data. How we first got into the crane and hoist world was due to tower cranes. We went to sell them information on their vehicles and normal types of service, and they said, well, you know what, we think I think I know where my guys are, but we think they're double shifting our tower cranes. So what they charge by is X number of hours per month. And the only way that you would know how much that's being used is by looking at the hour meter, but these things are on the other side of the country, and how do you get up there to get an accurate meter reading? And then also you don't know if it's actually running that whole time or not. So it could actually run for only 2 hours during the course of the day, but they might have used it over an 18-hour period. And that's what we were doing with the rental side on the typically it's been on the cranes more than anything else. So now we know that they actually used it. They had a guy in the seat from 6 o'clock in the morning until 6 o'clock at night, even though on the hour meter report, maybe it only ran for 4 hours that day. So they started to bill for that 6 to 6 time period, and were able to generate just a goodly amount of money, and it was in the contract, and it was what they were obligated to pay for what the contract said, but they had never had a way before to collect it. So we've been working with a lot of the tower crane companies, as well as the mobile crane bear rental companies, doing things like this. So you'll identify double shifting real quick. You'll identify the ability. The other issue was you get back at the end of the job. I know it ran overtime, so I write you a big invoice, and you say, you got your crane back. I didn't use it for all that much time. I'm just not going to pay you. So there was an issue of billing versus collecting. And by sending the bill out monthly, along with every start and stop, and when the shift time was, and how much that looked like, and what the billing rate was, then they get an invoice every month based upon actual usage, and they're collecting a whole lot more money than what they were collecting before. So that looks like this. So you'll see the day of the week, which is interesting for overtime. You'll see the machine hours, which would be exactly related to your hour meter value. And then you see that first on, last off. So that the first line item is a good example. This was a crane, I'm not sure which one this was, but this was an actual crane in February. So they ran it that first day from 6 o'clock in the morning until 5 o'clock in the afternoon, but only put 7 hours of machine hours on it. So the rest of the time maybe they were out of it, maybe they were just holding something, maybe they were getting ready for the next pick, whatever it was, but the usage on it was actually 11 hours. So as you go through that window of time, and I cut it off just to not show the whole month, but over the course of that month, their machine hours were 227 hours, but the hours they were actually able to bill for were the 312. So when you take those roughly 85 hours at $100 an hour or whatever that might be, you can see why these crane rental companies like our service quite a bit. It's just immediate top-line revenue with no associated cost to it, and they're just able to capitalize on their contracts in a way they were never able to do before. It's actually been interesting talking now to some of the folks that rent cranes from them and looking at doing utilization on their equipment or on their service vehicles, and then we step in a little bit into this, and I've seen that report. I get that report from company X, Y, or Z, and I was wondering how they did that. Well, that's us too. So we actually have several relationships where we're a couple of parties deep with these organizations and provide the service for everybody. There's crane rental companies that give access to their people that are renting from them to log into the system and see their data as well. So everyone is just starting to become more acceptant of what this looks like. So that's off the benefits. Moving on to what to look when you're going to select it. And there's a lot of systems out there. My database, I have over 200 companies that if you looked at their website, they would look like they're doing something in this area. So there's really a lot going on. The OEM solution, so Cranestar, is one that's made a lot of noise, which is very similar to what Caterpillar does, what John Deere does. So the OEM solutions, you can log in, you can get diagnostics, you can get data that we would never have, that companies that weren't OEMs would never have access to. There are a class of systems that are really based for fleets. So that might be, and for vehicles. So that a lot of dispatching, a lot of routing, a lot of detailed best path routing for pickup and delivery and that side. And then there's a class which we fall into, which is we've really focused on vehicles and equipment. And our view from our company's perspective is that there's a need for companies that can track everything that you have across the board that moves or runs or that you care about, and show it in one spot. So we're not as detailed at routing as some, and we're not as detailed at diagnostics as an OEM, but you can get a broad brush of all of your data, hours, location, sensor, maintenance, from a system that works on everything. Communications, the people might talk to you about satellite, and is this a satellite system? And there's two things. Every location comes from a satellite. So a lot of people will say it's a satellite system because it's getting location from satellite, but everybody gets it from satellite. So the question comes in is how does it broadcast the information back to the home? And that can be cellular or satellite. our experience, and we do both, we sell both, but our experience is that 90x%, 95, probably even higher percent of anything where any of our guys are in these industries, cellular is just fine. And it's a whole lot cheaper than using the satellite. So what we'll do with certain companies that have a few assets that are in the middle of nowhere where there is no cell coverage, then we'll put a few satellite units on that and use cellular for the rest. There's other companies that have a blended unit that it's satellite and cellular, and the dilemma with that is that it's bundled all inside one unit, it's just a little bit more expensive. So depending on your needs, what you need to think about. What reports are critical is probably the most important aspect. To me, what we're really driving is a reporting system. So if we didn't talk about fuel tax, but if fuel tax is an issue for your cross-state driving, you better look at the fuel tax report. You want to look at what the payroll report would look like. You want to see if they can do your overtime billing, your utilization. You want to see what that would look like, because that's really what you're getting. So you want to pay attention to that. Experience with your type of business, it took us years to really understand how these cranes worked, both on the mobile side and the tower side, understanding how to install in welders and generators and make that work. So while this same box can be used in just about anything, what's most important is that the people that are putting it in really understand how your stuff works so that it'll actually deliver the reliability that you need. And then cost-wise, so mobile units like this, somewhere between $200 and $1,000, again, depending upon who's selling it to you, depending upon if it's cellular or satellite, depending upon how many bells and whistles that it has on the inside of it, but it's a pretty broad range. For the basics, it should be on that lower end of the range. If you buy the OEM type solutions, it's probably on the higher end of the range. All satellite solutions are on the higher end of the range, but everybody's going to have some sort of a cost for the hardware. The service charge, again, it has a cellular or satellite subscription in it, so it has some sort of a ongoing monthly cost, or at least the guy that's selling it to you has some sort of an ongoing monthly cost. And that'll range anywhere from, there's people that will do like theft-only type, almost like a LoJack solution. It won't give you a lot of operational data, but you'll just be able to chase it down if it's stolen. And those could be in the $200 a year range. And when you look at the basic systems, for the most part that I've been talking about today, it's in the $15 to $30 range. And then the real high-end systems, either for a lot of satellite or a lot more routing and dispatching functionality, those might be in the $30 to $60 range. But everybody is kind of in that same ballpark. But various pricing models. So we'll run across people all the time that, oh, we don't have any upfront fee. Okay, they're taking the upfront fee and they're amortizing it into your ongoing monthly fee. So instead of paying a $25 monthly fee, you're going to pay a $45 monthly fee. So you're really just renting it, or you're leasing it, however you want to look at it. And some folks might do just the opposite and say, we have no monthly fee at all, but our box is $2,500, whatever that might be. So if you are shopping for one of these systems, you want to look at those two different categories, have them break out these categories of really what they mean, and just realize that these two things are in there somewhere, and you need to parse those out and see how to, what is the best fit for your company. The implementation of it isn't complicated, but it needs to be organized. So if you're going to deploy 20, 50, 100 of these things at a time, you need to think about where I want to have them installed, who's going to install them, where are they going to be, can I round up all the equipment and get them to the right spot, do I do it only when they come into my shop for maintenance? You spend a little time thinking about how you want that part of it to work, because it will be quite expensive to say, go to a company and just say, well, here's my list of where things are right now, and just go off and try to figure it out. So the company's going to need your help, and the more organized you can be, the better it's going to occur. And then the other thing we recommend is you want to focus on a few key things first. So instead of looking at the 5, 6 things that you have the option to do, focus on one that you think is the biggest bang for the buck for you. So you're making an investment in doing this. You want some sort of return in doing it. So if you are doing bare rental cranes, then obviously that's a great way to start. If you have vehicles, then the speeding and the idling, because that will be a direct fuel savings, might be an interesting place to start. On the maintenance side, if you have people running around trying to maintain your equipment and you're running an extra cost for that, maybe you want to focus there. But I would, if you buy a system that's capable of doing all those things, you can move into these other categories, but you want to focus on some bang for the buck initially. It doesn't have to be a person. When you're talking with folks, they think it's going to be, I need to have a person dedicated to just doing this. And it really doesn't need to be that way. There's a lot of automated reports that can come in. So as long as it's, again, set up correctly, you work with the install team, and so you know you're getting the data right, and then you just configure the reports to go to the right parties. So maintenance people get maintenance reports, and maybe a controller gets speeding or idling type reports. You have a safety person that gets speeding reports, and you can set all these up so really each person is getting a few extra emails a week or a month, however you decide to report it, plus a few maybe periodic things for geofence crossings for theft, or someone has to be responsible for that. But some of our best customers never log into the system. They just get reports and they get their data, and the way I think about these services being the most valuable is we're delivering data to you as an owner of a business or an operator of a business in ways that you couldn't otherwise get that data. So I think we talked about the industry experience, but it is important that they understand your equipment. We just know from experience how much we struggled initially until we understood this area. And I don't go after armored cars, I don't go after limousines, I don't go after certain areas because I know I don't understand those vehicles. So it's a pretty big decision from our standpoint to choose to go after an industry that we don't understand. The application of those 200 companies, probably 3/4 of them don't build their own application. So the hardware, there's probably only 3, 4, maybe a dozen companies that actually make hardware, but there's probably 2 or 3 that most all of us buy. So the hardware we all get from one spot, but the software is developed, in our case, by our people, so we can control it and change it. But probably 3/4 of the people out there are just reselling someone else's stuff. Some of them are reselling our stuff. And if you have an issue with needing a new report, needing new customization, I want something to work, if you're working with a reseller, your likelihood of actually getting that change implemented in a system is pretty remote. So there's enough good companies out there that write their own software. You should take a look at that. The customer service part, again, a lot of the folks that are kind of new to the business or don't have enough critical mass, their customer support, they just don't have the money to staff it the way they should staff it. So you want to check to make sure that they are dedicated, that they can help you with certain aspects and on your time frame. Probably not 24/7. We were expanding our hours for a while and found that most of our customers just call during business hours, so we run business hour support. But I have a team of 4, and they're always there to help people out. And we win a lot of business from companies who don't have that, and we just can't get the people to call us back. So it's something that you want to take a look at. And then on the installation as well, kind of goes along with understanding your equipment, but chances are the company that's selling this to you can install probably better than your folks can, just because they understand the nuances of what they're doing. So the alternative to that is having our folks train your folks on how to perform these installations. But for the amount of money that's typically charged versus your guys being off doing critical business, we're not sure that that's actually is good math for anybody. So we do have some folks that do it each different ways, but you want to make sure that whoever's coming out initially doesn't just send you a box of goods in the mail and a sheet of instructions. You want someone that's going to come out and help you through the process. So summarizing, widely deployed vehicles, that's been out since Qualcomm actually made their fortune in doing fleet management starting in the 80s. They were the biggest provider for the longest of times, and now it's more of a CDMA cell phone house, but they made most of their money doing vehicle tracking in the early days. On vehicles, it's been moving and growing, and on equipment, we're seeing it more and more all the time, typically less than 9 months. And as we start to do some math, and we could do some math with you as well on fuel savings, on overtime savings, on your maintenance level, it's pretty easy to document what those savings are and to show the systems pay for themselves. Focus on a few key benefits when you're implementing it. And then the last part, we don't view ourselves as a technology company, we view ourselves as a service provider. And you really need to develop a long-term relationship with the folks that we've had for years. They know us by name, they can call us whenever they need to call us. And when something needs to be chased down, whenever it needs to be chased down, we're there for them. So it's the relationship a whole lot more than it is just a pure technology sale. So with that, that's the deal. Questions?
We're just among friends.
We're just among friends.
What would be the key 2 or 3 things why remote dynamics would
we understand this industry. So it's understanding the equipment and making that part of it work is real key. And we've run into a lot of hurdles in understanding how the utilization is going to work, how to monitor things by days, just making the transition from trucks to equipment. The other one is that we go kind of broad across. So of those 200 companies, the ones that can do cellular or satellite, that can work on all your different types of equipment, that can work on all of your trucks and give you that data, that can do all your trailers and your trailer tracking, there's a couple of guys that I would go up against. So for this industry, I don't really feel like I have a lot of direct competition, and we're good and we stand behind our product.
You guys install it?
Yeah, we have a network of people that work with us, and for new customers that installing on cranes, different things. Greg runs all of our operations, but he'll go out, like with Buckner, he'll spend time with them as well in understanding how that's going to work. So we'll make a visit to your site and talk to your techs if you want to do it, or if we're installing on other devices, other machines, generators, then we can just ship our guys out there pretty much anywhere in the country and do the installations.
So are all your units hidden, or do you have models with in-cab display?
We don't do so we're more about the asset management and less about the driver communication. So we don't do the in-cab display driver communication. It's more, from our mindset, that's moving a lot more to the cell phones. So people will have maps on their cell phones, they'll have communications on their cell phones. So we stay away from that. And then as a large part of what we do is on the equipment side, then it really doesn't make a lot of sense either. So since we stay out of that, again, it kind of is segmented. The folks that do the over-the-road long-haul heavy truck, they have all the driver logs, and are you sleeping, resting, all those times, and it's not specifically our business. But there's probably 3-4 good names out there that do specifically that.
You have driver communication or operator communication?
No. It's all about the asset management.
I have two questions. So you see all these wonderful reports we get generated and fed back to our system.
Mm-hmm.
So then are we buying the software to put on our system?
No, it's all on the web. So you will, so you log into the website and you get the data emailed to you, so it can come in a PDF file, or they can come in an Excel file. So in Excel, then you can just look and see, integrate it, do mix and match, sort it, whatever you want to do with that. But most of it comes in with PDF, but never anything to install on your machines.
And then are they programmed differently if you're going to put it on a welder to track the hours versus putting it on a town crane to track whatever, or putting it on a vehicle to track the speed? So if you buy two, one for welder, one for vehicles, are they programmed differently, specifically for vehicle and specifically for
The only difference is that on the vehicle side, we want to get data out every minute, because if we did data longer than every minute, then we're going to miss that they were idling or that they were speeding. On the equipment, we can set it so that it only will give you data when it turns on and when it turns off. So they're programmed a little bit different, but it isn't. It's just a script that we put in it. So we can do it over the air and say that this one is going on a welder and this one's going on a truck, and we just program them to behave differently.
I was just thinking, like if you have it on a welder, you're tracking it off it, all of a sudden the welder is no longer in use.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can move it.
It's going to the boneyard, and so then you move it to
Yep, you could.
crane or vehicle or
Right,
whatever.
exactly.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Well, good. I'm glad my presentation didn't go to waste.
Never.
All right,
Appreciate your time.
super. Thank you much. And then.